50 rounds in 2.5 seconds. That was the MG-42, the fastest infantry weapon of the Second World War. And every few hundred rounds it had to stop dead while a man pulled a glowing barrel out of it, working through a mitt lined with asbestos because there was no other way to touch the metal. Josef Allerberger went to the Eastern Front in the summer of 1943 as a machine gunner, working the older of the two German Wehrmacht guns, the MG-34. He would later become one of the most decorated snipers of the Second World War, finishing the war with 257 confirmed kills and the Knight's Cross. But that came later. According to the memoir assembled from his interviews decades later, he learned something quickly that every German machine gunner learned, whichever gun he was given. The weapon made him the most hunted man in his squad. Mortars came looking for it. Infantry guns came looking for it. Snipers came looking for it above all, and losses among machine gun crews ran far ahead of losses among the riflemen around them. The reason was simple, and the crew could do nothing about it. The gun announced itself. At that rate of fire, the muzzle flash was close to continuous, and the sound carried further than any rifle. So the moment it opened up, every enemy weapon within range knew roughly where it was. A rifleman who fired gave away a position. A machine gun crew that fired gave away a position and then had to stay in it, because the gun was too heavy to move quickly and the belt had to keep running. Everything the enemy had went looking for that noise, but the thing that could get him killed fastest was not out in front of the gun. It was the handful of seconds when the gun went quiet. And Allerberger was not the man who controlled them. The gun kicks against the gunner's shoulder with every burst. Recoil is sharp and constant. Spent casings eject downward through a port in front of the trigger group and pile up in the dirt or bounce off the boots of the man lying behind him. Heat comes off the barrel through the perforated jacket until the second man feels it on his face without ever touching the metal. That second man is the reason this story exists. An American rifle squad in 1944 is 12 men, most of them carrying M1 Garans, with a 3-man team working a single Browning automatic rifle in support. The Browning is there to support the rifleman. The German Wehrmacht squad turns that arrangement inside out. In the German squad, the machine gun is the center of gravity. The squad leader's job is to point the gun. Everyone else's job is to keep it firing. The gunner is Schütze 1. His assistant is Schütze 2. The German army calls the MG-34 and the MG-42 general-purpose machine guns, and the description is literal. On a bipod, they serve as light machine guns. Put them on the Lafette tripod with an optical sight, and they reach 3,000 meters in direct fire, and drop indirect fire out to about 3,500. No Allied rifle squad had a belt-fed gun at its center. The German gun is belt-fed, and the belt is the reason the whole squad revolves around it instead of around its rifles. The machine gun team marches at the front of every column. When the squad spreads into extended order, the two crewmen stay at the center while the riflemen fan out left and right, about 5 paces between men. Every rush, every halt, every change of direction is organized around how fast 2 men can move a gun and the ammunition it eats. A full German squad carries roughly 1,100 rounds for the machine gun alone, distributed across every man in it. Riflemen haul belts, boxes, grenades, explosive charges, and sometimes the tripod. Their own rifles are secondary. The training manual calls the riflemen the assault group. In practice, they assault only after the gun has pinned the target. When the gun moves, they cover it with fire. When it sets up, they dig the crew's foxholes and watch the front. During sustained fire, several of them carry fresh ammunition forward by hand. The riflemen are, in effect, the machine gun's escort. The assistant carries more than any other man in the squad. A spare barrel rides in a protector on his back. 4 50-round drums, about 2.5 kilos apiece. a single ammunition box holding 300 rounds, a little over 10 kilograms on its own, which is more than most riflemen carry in total. A pistol, a short spade, and the asbestos mitt he will need when the barrel starts to glow. He has to run with all of it, and he has to stay within a few paces of a man who cannot look behind him. The gunner carries the gun, 11.5 kilograms before a single round is loaded, plus a drum on the weapon and a pouch of tools for field repairs. On long marches, the two of them trade the gun back and forth so that neither collapses under it. Add it up, and the pair are moving something close to 60 kilograms between them, and none of it can be put down. When the squad rushes, they rush with it. When the squad goes flat, the boxes come down on top of them. The barrel protector on the assistant's back stops him lying properly flat at all, which is a particular problem for a man whose job puts him a few paces from the loudest object on the battlefield. There is a reason the two of them trade the gun, and a reason the riflemen end up carrying belts. Two men cannot feed a weapon that eats 300 rounds in 15 seconds. 9 men, working together, barely can. In 1942, there were 3 men on that gun. A dedicated ammunition carrier brought a second spare barrel, and 2 more 300-round boxes, another 22 kilograms of metal and cartridges. Then, under a reorganization effective the 1st of October 1943, he was deleted. The squad went from 10 men to 9. His barrel and his boxes went to the riflemen, who were already porters for the gun. The work did not change. There were simply 2 men left to do it. When the firing position is reached, Schütze 1 takes the trigger, and Schütze 2 drops to his left or his rear, low and under cover if the ground allows, close enough to feed the belt, clear a jam, or take the gun outright. Ammunition runs into the receiver on a metal link chain that rattles as it moves. His hands are never still. He corrects the feed, checks the tension, watches the ammunition level. If the gunner is hit, he takes the trigger without letting the rhythm break. At its cyclic rate, 1,200 rounds a minute, the MG42 fires about half again as fast as the MG34, and roughly twice as fast as the British and American guns it was shooting at. It empties a 50-round drum in 2.5 seconds. A full 300-round box is gone in 15 seconds of continuous fire. Nobody who heard it forgot the noise. It is not a series of individual shots. It is a tearing sound, continuous, and it erases the ability to think. The Germans who worked the gun called it the Knochensage, the bone saw, and the Hitlersage, Hitler's saw. American soldiers heard the same sound, mangled the German nickname, and turned it into Hitler's Buzzsaw. A young American lieutenant named Orville Martin put it more plainly. He said it sounded like a zipper. 3 armies came up with 3 different names for one sound. If you want more of the war told from inside the crew rather than from above it, subscribe. German crews are trained not to make that sound for long. Instructions translated by American intelligence in 1944 tell gunners to fire bursts of 5 to 7 rounds in the light roll and warn that in the heavy roll, sustained fire must be avoided at all costs because the results are disappointing and the ammunition expenditure intolerable. Short bursts save the barrel and the belt. About 22 bursts a minute is what a gun actually delivers in the field, which puts the real rate somewhere between 110 and 150 rounds a minute, nowhere near the number on the specification. But in a defensive fight, with the enemy closing and the range short, the gunner holds the trigger longer, and the assistant starts counting. He is counting because the barrel is the gun's weak point, and he is the only man who can fix it. The gunner cannot help him. The barrel of the MG42 was mass-produced by hammer forging, the first production weapon built that way, with polygonal rifling formed in a single step inside a lighter tube than the MG34 carried. Cheap, fast, and unable to soak up heat the way the older barrel could. How long it lasts depends on who you ask, and the sources do not agree. German regulations gave 150 rounds of continuous fire before a change. American interrogators wrote down 250. And the German prisoners those interrogators were questioning told them crews often pushed to 400. The truth is that the number moves with the weather, the dust, and how disciplined the gunner is with his bursts. What does not move is what happens when the barrel has had enough. Schütze too performs the change. The gunner does not look away from his sector. He keeps his eyes forward and his hands on the trigger group, while the assistant opens the hatch on the side of the barrel jacket. On the older gun, the barrel came out backwards, straight from the rear, and it took a well-drilled crew 10 to 15 seconds. On the MG42, there is a long slot cut down the right side of the casing. The assistant releases the breech end, swings the barrel out sideways, and pulls it clear. A fresh one goes in at the same angle. There are no threads and no fine adjustments anywhere in the process. Simplicity is what makes the speed possible. About 5 seconds for a crew that has done it 100 times, 10 in mud and darkness. He grips a bar of metal hot enough to burn through the mitt if he hesitates, working by feel because smoke and dirt hide what his hands are doing. If he fumbles, the silence lasts longer, and during all of it, the gunner is helpless. He cannot fire. He cannot see what is happening behind him. He can only stare into the smoke and wait for the slap on his shoulder that means the gun is alive again. Every second is longer than the one before it. The assistant knows this, and he works like a man who can feel his partner's eyes on his back. So here is the question the whole war asked of that pause. What did the men on the other end of the gun do about it? The answer is stranger than it should be. In 1944, the War Department put out a training film comparing American automatic weapons to German ones. And its argument was not tactical, it was psychological. The film told American soldiers that the MG42's bark was worse than its bite, that all that speed cost the gun its accuracy, that it threw its rounds too wide, and that American weapons delivered a rate of fire that was not just noise. Men who stayed properly spread out, the reasoning went, could find the gaps and slip through the beaten zone. Part of that was true. A machine gun does not spray bullets at a wall. It lays them into a beaten zone, a patch of ground the cone of fire actually covers. And at 1,200 rounds a minute, the gun shakes itself enough that the patch grows wider and thinner than the gunner would like. Wartime American reports do describe soldiers slithering out of the dispersion area, so the film was not lying. It was just not the whole truth. The same intelligence service that noted the poor dispersion also concluded that this gun killed and wounded tens of thousands of Allied troops. Both things were true at once, and only one of them was in the film. One American weapons writer, reviewing those wartime assessments long afterwards, put the objection in a single line. The buzzsaw's bite, he wrote, is what one needed to worry about. That was the official answer to the fastest gun on the battlefield. Not a way to beat it, a reassurance. The Germans had a more practical answer to their own problem. Their doctrine rested on surprise, fire, and movement, coordinating firepower, conserving ammunition, and alternate positions. And it is the last of those that mattered to a crew in a pause. Stellungswechsel, the change of position. Dig more than one pit, and do not stay in the one the enemy has already found. One account of German practice describes 3 prepared positions for a single gun, one of them well behind the main line. Whatever the exact arrangement, the principle was the same, and it was the crew's only real protection. A gun that has just gone quiet should not be where it was when it was firing. Popular accounts of the MG42 focus on the gunner. They describe the trigger, the rate of fire, the sound that earned all those names. the assistant gunner is almost never the subject. More than 400,000 of these guns left German factories before the war ended, and every one of them needed 2 men. The gun got cheaper as the war went on. It was faster to build than the one it replaced, stamped instead of machined. But nothing about that reached the crew. The weight stayed the same. The heat stayed the same. The pause stayed the same. And after October 1943, there was one fewer man to carry it. The German squad was built around a trade-off it never named out loud. A gun fast enough to stop an entire platoon was also a gun that had to stop. Doctrine handed that bargain to 2 men and asked them to carry the firepower of 10. And the price was paid in the seconds between bursts, by the man kneeling behind the gun with his hands inside a mitt. The gun is remembered in every account of the war. Those seconds are not. Allerberger's gun was the loudest thing on his stretch of the Eastern Front, and the moments that decided whether he lived were the ones where it made no sound at all. History kept the noise. The 2 men kept the silence. If this one was worth your time, subscribe to Nick's World War II archive.